They say the worst betrayals don't come from enemies, they come from the ones who knew exactly where to cut the deepest. I used to think heartbreak was a slow burn. But in truth, it detonates, all at once. And on the night I turned 38, my entire world exploded. Right there, between the clink of champagne glasses and the sound of birthday laughter echoing through my house. I always thought I'd remember my 38th birthday for the stunning 3-tier cake I'd spent hours decorating. Or maybe for the pricey bottle of Merlot I'd been saving for something special. Instead, I'll remember it as the day my world shattered into a million pieces. The day I caught my husband of 13 years, Brian, pressed against my cousin, Natalie, in our upstairs bathroom. The house had been buzzing with excitement all day. I'd invited our closest friends and family for what I hoped would be a night to remember. Little did I know just how unforgettable it would become. The living room was filled with elegant silver and navy blue balloons, and the dining table was set with my late grandmother's best china, which I only brought out for truly special moments. "Has anyone seen Brian?" I asked, balancing a tray of hors d'oeuvres while welcoming some late guests. My best friend, Monica, shook her head and kept arranging flowers in the tall crystal vase. "I think he went upstairs to grab something," my brother-in-law said casually, reaching for a deviled egg. I nodded and continued hosting, though a strange unease started tugging at me. Brian had been distant lately, working late, whispering during phone calls, coming home with hints of unfamiliar perfume on his clothes. I had buried my doubts under layers of denial, telling myself that 13 years of marriage couldn't fall apart over some vague suspicions. Natalie had shown up fashionably late, as usual. She was my aunt's daughter, my first cousin, but we'd grown up like sisters. She was breathtaking in ways I never was. Tall, willowy, with rich auburn hair that fell in flawless waves down her back. I'd always admired her, even when jealousy tried to claw its way out. "Happy birthday, cuz," she'd exclaimed, hugging me tight and handing me a beautifully wrapped gift. "This party is gorgeous. You've outdone yourself." As the evening carried on, I began to notice that both Brian and Natalie had vanished. 20 minutes passed, then 30. The cake was ready, candles unlit, but my husband was missing, the man who always led the birthday song. "I'll go check upstairs," I told Monica, who gave me a look filled with worry. There was something in her eyes that hinted she knew more than she wanted to say. The second floor of our home was quiet, a harsh contrast to the laughter and music echoing from below. I checked our bedroom, empty. Then the guest room, nothing. It wasn't until I reached the master bathroom that I heard it. Soft whispers and a muffled giggle. I knew that laugh instantly. It was Natalie's. My hand froze on the doorknob. My fingers trembled. My breath caught in my throat as 1,000 thoughts screamed through my mind. No. Please, no. No. This couldn't be happening. Not here, not now, not on my birthday. I could feel my pulse hammering in my ears, drowning out the noise of the party below. My knees weakened, and for a split second I considered turning back, preserving whatever illusion I had left. But denial had already cost me too much. Part of me wanted to run, to pretend I'd heard nothing. But the part of me that had known deep down for months something was wrong, that part pushed the door open. The scene in front of me would be forever burned into my memory. Brian's hands tangled in Natalie's hair, her lipstick smeared across his mouth, her dress pushed up around her waist. They were so caught up in each other that they didn't see me at first. When they finally did, the horror on their faces might have been laughable, if it hadn't been my nightmare come true. "Brianna." Brian stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the bathroom rug. "This isn't." "Don't you dare say this isn't what it looks like," I whispered, my voice eerily calm despite the storm raging inside me. "Because it's exactly what it looks like." Natalie frantically adjusted her dress, her face flushed with guilt and something else. Was it excitement, the thrill of being caught? "Brianna, please," she began, reaching toward me. "It just happened. In my bathroom? On my birthday?" I laughed, the sound hollow and unfamiliar. "Things don't just happen, Natalie. How long?" Brian stepped forward. "Brianna, let's talk about this privately." "How long?" I repeated, each word a loaded weapon. 6 months, Natalie whispered, tears filling her eyes. Fake tears, I thought bitterly. 6 months, half a year of betrayal, of kisses soaked in lies. of long nights working late and mysterious family visits. 6 months of me planning romantic dinners, questioning our intimacy, blaming myself for not being enough. And all the while, the party downstairs went on, unaware of the destruction unfolding above. I heard someone calling my name, probably wondering where the birthday girl had vanished to. "Get out," I said quietly. "Brianna, please, I can explain." Brian started. "Get out," I screamed, my composure finally snapping. "Both of you, get the hell out of my house." They bolted past me like guilty teenagers. Brian grabbed his phone off the counter. Natalie clutched her purse tightly. I watched them rush down the stairs, offering weak, awkward excuses to confused guests about some made-up emergency. Moments later, Monica found me sitting on the bathroom floor, staring at Natalie's discarded earring. "Oh, Brianna," she whispered, kneeling beside me. "I'm so sorry. I suspected, but I didn't know how to tell you." I looked up at her, something hardening inside me. "Don't be sorry. This isn't over." In that moment, while guests murmured in confusion and my birthday cake sat untouched on the table, I made a decision. Brian and Natalie thought they had humiliated me, broken me. They had no idea what was coming. As Monica helped me to my feet, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, my eyes blazing with something I hadn't felt in years: purpose. They would pay. For every lie, every secret meeting, every moment they made me question my worth. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of their reckoning. The next week passed in a blur. Lawyer meetings, ignored texts from Brian, and casseroles from well-meaning friends who'd heard about the public explosion of my marriage. I drifted through it all like a ghost, responding when addressed, nodding at the right moments, but my mind was focused elsewhere. Planning. Brian had moved into a hotel downtown, sending daily apologies that became increasingly desperate. Natalie had fled to her mother's place in Connecticut, hiding from the storm she'd helped create. They thought the worst was over. They were wrong. "You should consider therapy," my sister suggested gently over coffee, her eyes full of concern. "Revenge won't make you feel better, Brianna." I smiled and nodded, but inside, I knew she was wrong. Revenge wouldn't just make me feel better. It would restore the balance that had been so violently disrupted. On my birthday, my first step was information. Brian had always been careless with his passwords, using the same combination of our anniversary and his childhood dog's name for everything. His email, social media, even bank accounts, they were all wide open to me. What I found was worse than anything I'd imagined. The affair hadn't just been a moment of weakness. It had been orchestrated. Brian and Natalie had been exchanging flirtatious messages for weeks before their first hotel rendezvous. I downloaded everything: texts, photos, hotel receipts. These weren't just proof of betrayal, they were ammunition. Next, I turned to finances. As CFO of his company, Brian prided himself on being financially brilliant. What he didn't know was that I'd been quietly paying attention for years. I knew about the offshore account he thought I couldn't possibly be aware of. I knew about the investment property he bought under his brother's name to dodge taxes. I knew it all. "Mrs. Preston, these allegations are serious," said Thomas Weathers, the silver-haired forensic accountant I hired. "If what you've shown me checks out, your husband could face some steep penalties for tax evasion." I simply nodded as he flipped through the documents I'd meticulously compiled. "And this remains confidential until we're ready to proceed?" "Absolutely," he assured me. "Attorney-client privilege extends to consultants like myself." While digging deeper into Brian's files, I stumbled upon something unexpected. Emails showing that he and Natalie were planning to launch a business together. They were using money siphoned from our joint savings. A boutique marketing agency, of all things. Specializing, ironically, in authentic brand storytelling. The irony would have made me laugh if I hadn't been so infuriated. The business was in its early stages. They'd secured a small downtown office space and were already in talks with potential clients, mostly Brian's professional contacts. It hadn't launched yet. They were waiting for what they described in their emails as the inevitable fallout. Their plan was to tell me about the affair after the holidays. Brian would ask for a divorce then. My birthday just forced them to accelerate their timeline. "This changes everything," I muttered, staring at the business plan file on his laptop. Sleek logo, 5-year projections, optimistic timelines. A plan began to take shape in my mind. I wouldn't just expose them. I'd outplay them. I reached out to Devin Armstrong, Brian's biggest client and an old friend of mine from university. We met for lunch at a high-end restaurant far from any place Brian frequented. "I've been meaning to reach out," Devin said, his voice filled with genuine sympathy. "I heard about Brian and I'm really sorry." I waved off his condolences. "Thanks, but that's not why I asked to meet. I've got a business proposition for you." By the time dessert arrived, Devin was leaning forward, visibly interested in my pitch, a bold, fresh marketing strategy for his luxury hotel brand that directly undercut everything Brian and Natalie were working on. "You've always had sharp instincts, Brianna," Devin said, "but I didn't know you had an interest in marketing." "There's a lot people don't know about me," I said with a small smile, "including my husband." That evening, I filed for an LLC under the name Authentic Narrative Co., a name close enough to theirs that, when the time came, Brian and Natalie would have no doubt what I was doing. With my background in communications and the network I'd built through years of supporting Brian's career, I was perfectly positioned to become their biggest threat. The next phase demanded patience. I needed to know exactly when Brian and Natalie planned to launch their company publicly. By continuing to monitor their emails, I found out they had scheduled a launch party 3 weeks out, with all of Brian's key clients invited. Perfect. Two could play that game, and I had the home field advantage. These people had eaten at my table, received handwritten Christmas cards from me, confided in me during corporate retreats. They knew me. They trusted me. Many had already reached out to express their sympathy once the news of my marriage's collapse started circulating. While Brian and Natalie were busy organizing their big debut, I was quietly reaching out to every client on their launch list. Not to slander them, that would be too obvious and possibly backfire, but to announce my own new venture. "This has been therapeutic for me," I told each one. After everything, I just needed to channel my energy into something positive. The response was more supportive than I could have imagined. By the end of 2 weeks, I had verbal commitments from 7 of Brian's top 10 clients. Devin introduced me to 3 more prospects through his network. Meanwhile, I kept up appearances, playing the role of the shattered, heartbroken wife. When running into mutual friends, I let my voice waver slightly when Brian's name came up. I posted bittersweet quotes on Instagram. I even left Brian a teary voicemail, pleading for him to reconsider the marriage. Sometimes after I hung up from one of those performances, I had to sit in silence for a few minutes just to remember who I was in all of this. The act came too easily, the tears too real. There were moments when I wasn't even sure if I was pretending anymore, or if the heartbreak had quietly settled in again under my armor. That was the hardest part, weaponizing my pain without letting it consume me. Let him think I was still broken. Let them both feel untouchable. Then my attorney called with an update on the divorce. Brian's lawyer is pushing for a fast settlement. They're offering the house and the car but want to retain all investment accounts. I smiled to myself. Tell them I need more time. Say I'm too emotional to make any financial decisions right now. Are you sure? The house offer is generous. I'm sure. I need 3 more weeks. As the date of Brian and Natalie's launch drew closer, I finalized my own counter-event. I booked a venue at the very same luxury hotel where, according to their emails, Brian had first taken Natalie. Invitations were sent to every client they were targeting, scheduled 1 hour before their own launch. Everything was falling into place. They had taken so much from me: my marriage, my trust, my birthday. But now I was going after what they valued most, their future. The night before their big day, I got a text from Brian. "I hope you're doing better, Brianna. I never meant to hurt you like this." I stared at the screen for a long moment, thinking of all that would unfold tomorrow. Then I typed my reply. "You have no idea what's coming." The morning of the launch arrived bright and cloudless, perfect weather for the storm I was about to unleash. I dressed with care. A tailored crimson power suit Brian had never seen, bought specifically for this moment. My hair and makeup were flawless, not the look of a woman in pieces, but a woman ready for war. They expected me to be finished. My event was scheduled for 6 p.m. in the grand ballroom of the Westford Hotel, the very same hotel where, according to the texts I'd uncovered, Brian had taken Natalie for their 3rd rendezvous. Their event was set for 7 p.m. at some trendy gallery downtown. The timing wasn't a coincidence. My guests would be well-fed, engaged, and impressed long before their invitations to Brian's event even began. "Everything's ready," my assistant, Kelsey, confirmed as she handed me a tablet showing the finalized guest list. 43 confirmed attendees, including every major client on your target list. I skimmed the names, feeling a swell of satisfaction. Devon had brought along 3 senior execs from his parent company. Perfect. "And the presentation?" I asked. "Tested and queued. The folders are placed at each seat. Champagne service starts at 6:45, just before your keynote." Each guest's folder contained more than just glossy materials for Authentic Narrative Co. Each one held a personalized letter, addressed directly to the client, outlining why we were the superior choice. With discreet references to conversations I'd had over dinners, at fundraisers, or during late-night brainstorming sessions, I showed that I knew their needs better than Brian or Natalie ever could. At 5:30, I arrived to oversee the final touches. The room was breathtaking. Refined lighting, tastefully arranged florals, and a minimalist branding aesthetic that spoke volumes about trust and precision. That last part, authenticity, wasn't lost on me. As I stood in the center of the ballroom, taking it all in, my pulse quickened. This was the culmination of months of pain, strategy, and execution. But beneath the pride and precision lay something quieter, an anxious hum in my chest. Would they come? Would they stay? Would they see me, really see me? Not just as the woman who'd been betrayed, but as the strategist, the visionary? I forced a deep breath and reminded myself, I had earned this moment. "Miss Preston, there's something you should know," Kelsey whispered as guests began arriving. "Mr. Preston is here. He's at the bar." My heartbeat skipped. That wasn't in the script. Had someone tipped him off? "Keep tabs on him. Let me know if he comes anywhere near the ballroom," I said. As I greeted arriving guests, my mind raced through the possibilities. Maybe he was meeting someone. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe he didn't even realize I was here. Or maybe he knew exactly what he was walking into. But the thought of him just floors away added a jolt of tension I hadn't prepared for. By 6:15, the ballroom was buzzing with energy. Familiar faces from Brian's client list filled the space. Industry leaders, influencers, and even 2 investors he'd spent months chasing. Devon caught my eye from across the room, raising his glass in silent solidarity. At 6:30, I took the stage. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I began, voice steady and sure. "Many of you know me as Brian Preston's wife, or more accurately, soon-to-be ex-wife." A ripple of uneasy laughter passed through the crowd. "What you may not know," I continued, "is that behind the scenes of many successful campaigns you've associated with my husband's firm, I was there. Strategizing, executing, innovating." I clicked to the first slide, metrics, timelines, and visuals showcasing major wins I'd quietly helped deliver. Tonight, I'm not here as someone's silent partner. I'm here as a leader in my own right. As I moved through the rest of the deck, I could feel the shift in the room. This wasn't pity attendance. They were truly engaged. They were impressed. Then, just as I was building to my conclusion, the ballroom doors swung open. Brian stood there. His expression shifted from confusion to realization as he scanned the room, recognizing clients from his roster all fully engaged in my presentation. Our eyes locked from across the room. For a beat, time stopped. Then, deliberately, I smiled and continued without a single pause. "As you can see from these projections," I said, clicking to the next slide, "Authentic Narrative offers something our competitors cannot. Genuine insight built on years of experience and deeply cultivated relationships." Brian remained rooted at the doorway, taking it all in. Clients raising their glasses to me, my company's sleek logo glowing on the screens, and the woman on stage. A far cry from the shattered wife he'd walked away from. I could pinpoint the exact second it hit him. His face blanched, then turned a deep shade of red. He stepped forward, but Devon intercepted him, saying something I couldn't make out. Whatever it was, it stopped Brian in his tracks. "And now," I continued, steady and clear, "I'd like to share something personal, something that highlights why authenticity must begin at the core." The screens shifted to a split image. On one side, Brian's professional emails, where he took credit for my strategies. On the other side, his private messages to Natalie, outlining plans to build a company using those same ideas. Authentic storytelling begins with honest foundations, I said, my voice carrying across the now silent room. Without trust, there is no authenticity. Without integrity, there is no sustainable success. Brian turned and stormed out of the ballroom. I finished my presentation without a flaw and ended with an open invitation for one-on-one consultations. By 6:45, champagne was being poured, and I had secured verbal commitments from 11 clients, Devon's entire network among them. At 6:55, my phone buzzed with a message from Kelsey, who I'd stationed near the entrance of Brian and Natalie's event. Only 8 people have arrived. B and N arguing outside. I smiled and tucked the phone back in my pocket, turning to the hedge fund manager beside me, who wanted to discuss a collaboration. By 8:30, my launch was wrapping up. By all standards, it had been a triumph. Devon approached with 2 glasses of champagne, offering me one. "You know," he said, voice low, "I've known Brian for 15 years. I never realized how much of his success was actually yours." I took a slow sip. Neither did he. As the last guests left, each with personalized folders and follow-up meetings on the calendar, Kelsey returned with another update. "Their launch bombed. Half the guests never even showed. 3 walked out after getting word about your presentation. Natalie had some sort of meltdown and left early." I nodded, not with joy but with a cool, clean satisfaction. "And Brian?" "Still there. Tried to wing the presentation but ended up canceling it. Now he's outside the hotel, drinking with his brother and a couple of friends." The night air was crisp and clear. As my driver pulled up, I caught sight of a familiar figure lingering near the shadows of the parking garage. Natalie. Her makeup was streaked with tears, and she stood motionless beside her car. For a brief moment, our eyes met. I could have walked over, could have said something cutting, rubbed salt into the raw wound, but instead, I just smiled faintly and slid into the back seat of my waiting car. "Where to, ma'am?" my driver asked. "Home," I replied, suddenly feeling the full weight of the evening settle into my chest. The adrenaline was fading, and in its place came a slow, creeping fatigue, the kind that settles into your bones when the fight is over. I leaned my head against the window, the city lights blurring as exhaustion and something like sorrow wrapped around me. This had been a victory, yes, but it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like aftermath. The night was just beginning, because what Brian and Natalie didn't realize was that their public disaster was only phase 1. The forensic accountant's full report was scheduled to reach the IRS first thing tomorrow. And my divorce attorney? She had a meeting scheduled with the partners at Brian's firm to present some very damning evidence of ethical misconduct. Their nightmare wasn't over. It was just beginning. For the first time since my birthday, I felt something that resembled happiness. The next morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls and 22 text messages, 13 from Brian, 7 from Natalie, and the rest from mutual acquaintances desperate for the inside scoop. I ignored every single one of them. Instead, I made myself a slow, indulgent breakfast on the patio, sipping coffee and soaking in the satisfaction of watching a plan unfold exactly as intended. Still, beneath the satisfaction, there was a hollow echo. I'd won. But what exactly had I claimed? Justice, yes. Vindication, certainly. But peace? That still felt like a distant country. By noon, the fallout had begun to trickle in. Devon was the first to call. "Brianna, have you heard? The IRS showed up at Brian's office this morning. It's chaos. Whole floors talking." I feigned surprise. "Really? That's unexpected." "Is it?" Devon's tone hinted that he wasn't fooled. "Also," he added, 3 more clients from last night reached out asking for your contact info. Whatever you're doing, it's working." What I was doing was reclaiming my life. One precise, calculated move at a time. Next came a call from my attorney. "The partners at Langston and Harper received our documents this morning. Brian's been placed on immediate administrative leave pending further investigation." I let a note of feigned concern enter my voice. "That's unfortunate. How did he take the news?" "Not well, from what my source tells me. Security had to walk him out. Brian's entire career had hinged on his reputation for being financially brilliant and beyond reproach. That image had just crumbled. The hidden accounts, the tax evasion, the breach of fiduciary trust. It wasn't just about the money. It was everything he'd ever claimed to be. Around 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. I glanced at the screen connected to the security cam. Natalie. She looked nothing like the polished woman who once smirked at me across my own bathroom. Her hair was scraped back in a messy ponytail, her face pale and bare, her eyes puffy and rimmed red from crying. I considered ignoring her, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened the door, but stepped into the threshold, barring her from entering. "Brianna, please," she began, her voice cracking. "You have to stop this. Brian's under investigation. They're talking criminal charges." I looked at her coolly. "That's unfortunate, but financial crimes tend to be taken quite seriously." "This isn't just about him," she cried, her eyes brimming again. "We were building something together. My name is on everything. I could lose everything." "How terrible," I replied evenly, not a trace of sympathy in my voice. "Having your life turned upside down by someone you trusted. I can't imagine how that must feel." The sarcasm in my voice didn't go unnoticed. Natalie flinched, as if I'd slapped her. "I know you hate us right now, and you have every right to. But this is too much. It's destroying lives." "My life was destroyed the moment I opened that bathroom door," I said quietly. "The difference is, I'm rebuilding mine. Maybe you should focus on doing the same." I closed the door on her tear-streaked face just as my phone buzzed again. A message from Brian. "We need to talk. Now. Stop this madness before it goes too far." Too far? They had no boundaries, no limits, when they were sneaking around behind my back, plotting a future inside my home, undermining everything I'd built. And now I was the one going too far? I owed them nothing. The real shock came later that afternoon. My divorce attorney called with an update that made even me pause. "The forensic audit triggered a wider investigation," she explained. "The IRS froze all of Brian's assets, every account with his name attached to it, including the joint ones." I stiffened. "He still had access to all of those." "Not anymore," she replied. "The only accounts left untouched are the ones in your name alone, the ones you had before the marriage." Relief coursed through me. We had filed that financial separation paperwork just in time. My personal accounts, especially the ones I used to fund authentic narrative, were untouched. I'd acted quickly after discovering the affair. Moved my inheritance, protected my premarital savings. Every dollar behind my launch had come from clean, protected funds. Brian and Natalie hadn't been so careful. Their startup, funded entirely from joint accounts, now frozen. That evening, social media erupted. Industry peers posted cryptic but pointed messages about ethics in business and the importance of transparency and trust. The professional world was small, and word traveled fast. Then came the call I'd half expected, half dreaded. Martha, my mother-in-law, had always been kind to me, even when her son hadn't been. "Brianna," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know everything that's going on, but Brian is a mess. He came here crying, barely coherent, saying you've ruined him." I closed my eyes, heart heavy. Martha was collateral damage, one of the few I hadn't meant to hurt. "I'm sorry you're in the middle of this, Martha. He says you destroyed his career, stole his clients, and reported him to the IRS. Please tell me that's not true." "I didn't steal anything," I replied calmly. "I earned the clients who chose to work with me. As for the rest, actions have consequences. Brian made his choices." There was a long, tense silence before she spoke again. "He told me about Natalie. What they did to you, it's unforgivable. I raised him better than that." Her voice cracked. "But Brianna, revenge won't fix what's broken." "This isn't just about revenge," I told her honestly. "It's about justice, about not letting myself be written out of my own story." After we ended the call, I sat in the quiet of my living room, the light dimming around me. The satisfaction I'd felt earlier had deepened into something else, more measured, more grounded. This wasn't the euphoric victory I'd imagined during those sleepless nights spent plotting my response. This was resolve, balance restored. My phone rang again, Brian's 20th attempt. This time I answered. "What have you done?" he demanded, his voice thick and slurred. "Have you been drinking?" I asked. "They're saying I could go to prison, Brianna." "Prison? Over what? A mistake? An affair?" "Not over an affair," I said, keeping my tone calm. "Over tax evasion, financial fraud, ethical violations in your practice." "You did those things, Brian. I just made sure the right people found out." "You've ruined me," he whispered. The rage in his voice began to fade, replaced by something weaker, despair. "Everything I built, gone in a day." Are you happy now? Was I? The question gave me pause. I'm free, I finally said. You took my trust, my love, my sense of security, and my dignity. I've taken back my power. That's not happiness, Brian. That's justice. Please, he begged, voice cracking. Call off the IRS. Say it was a misunderstanding. I'll give you anything, the house, the investments, whatever you want. I already have what I want, I told him. A future, one you're not in. As night fell, I stood by the bedroom window, looking out over the neighborhood where we once talked about raising kids. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, growing my business with integrity, managing the legal fallout from Brian's collapse, continuing the long road of healing. But tonight, in the calm that followed the storm, I felt something I hadn't known since my birthday. Peace. 1 year later, I sat at an outdoor cafe in a city nearly 300 miles away from the place where my marriage unraveled. The morning sun warmed my face as I sipped espresso and flipped through the quarterly projections for Authentic Narrative, now a thriving boutique agency with offices in 3 cities. Miss Preston, a barista approached, offering a still warm croissant. Just came out of the oven. On the house. I smiled and nodded in thanks. Technically, I'd reclaimed my maiden name, Brianna Sinclair, 6 months earlier. The divorce had finalized quickly once Brian realized that fighting me would only prolong his humiliation. The aftermath of everything I'd done was both more and less catastrophic than I expected. Brian had been charged with tax-related crimes, ultimately accepting a deal. Probation, steep financial penalties, and community service. His professional licenses were suspended. His old firm erased his name from every past campaign he'd once taken credit for. Natalie avoided jail time, but not the shame. Her family, long connected to mine, had publicly disavowed her behavior. She moved across the country, hoping to disappear into a quieter life. Devin became my agency's top client and a close friend. You know what impresses me most? He'd said during one of our recent meetings. Not the revenge, though it was well executed. It's what you built after. That takes real depth. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister. Happy birthday. Ready for tonight? Today I turned 39, my first birthday since the one that changed everything. This year's celebration would be small. Dinner with my sister Monica and 2 close friends I'd made since the move. No towering cake, no festive balloons, and certainly no betrayal waiting behind a bathroom door. I had one more milestone to mark today. The final sale of the house I once shared with Brian was set to close that afternoon. By sunset, I would sever the last physical tie to my former life. As I finished my coffee, a notification popped up on my phone. An email from Martha, my former mother-in-law. We'd maintained occasional cautious contact, both of us navigating the strange terrain of still caring for one another while being divided by something too wide to cross. Dear Brianna, I've been thinking of you as your birthday approaches. I just wanted you to know, I admire your resilience. Brian made his choices, and now he's living with the consequences, as we all must. I hope this year brings you peace and continued success. With affection, Martha. Her words brought a sudden sting of tears to my eyes. I hadn't expected this kind of tenderness from the woman who once dreamed of me being her daughter forever, and I hadn't realized until now how deeply I'd missed her. Martha had been more than Brian's mother to me. She had been comfort, wisdom, a second maternal presence in my life. And losing her, quietly, inevitably, was one of the hidden casualties of my marriage falling apart. In executing my plan, I had braced myself for backlash, for rage, for blame, for people taking sides. I hadn't prepared for grace. Martha's ability to acknowledge her son's failures and still show kindness to me touched a part of me I'd thought had gone numb. People often asked if I regretted it, if I thought I'd gone too far. The truth wasn't simple. I didn't regret exposing Brian's financial crimes. Those were real and would have come to light eventually. I didn't regret launching my company or earning the trust of clients who saw my worth. Those choices were about survival, about reclaiming a future. What I sometimes revisited in the quietest moments was the precision, the public spectacle, the surgical way I'd timed his downfall to coincide with his planned moment of triumph. Had I crossed from justice into cruelty, then I would remember. The bathroom door swinging open, their faces, guilt, yes, but also exhilaration, the thrill of getting caught. The messages, laughing about what they owed me, mapping out their future while dismissing my past. And just like that, the doubt would disappear. After breakfast, I walked to my office, a light-filled space on a tree-lined street, a far cry from the glass towers where I'd once worked under Brian's shadow. My team of 8 greeted me as I passed. "The Anderson proposal is ready for review," my assistant said, following me into my office. "And another agency from Chicago reached out. They're still interested in a potential acquisition." I nodded and took the folder from her hand. 3 different agencies had contacted me in the past 2 months about buying my company. I'd built something from the wreckage. Something mine. Something people now wanted. After work, I signed the final documents for the sale of the house. As I handed the keys to the new owners, a young couple with twins, excited about the backyard and school district, I felt something lift, the last weight. Gone. The house deserved a fresh start, with people unburdened by its history. That evening, as promised, I celebrated my birthday quietly. Just my sister and a couple of new friends at a small, cozy restaurant I'd found since moving. The conversation flowed with ease. Real laughter, not the strained social performance I used to force at birthdays, when I worked so hard to project a perfect image of wedded bliss. "A toast," my sister Monica said, raising her glass. "To Brianna, who reminded us all that endings are just beginnings in disguise." Later, as I walked home under a canopy of stars, I let myself reflect. It had been a year since the disaster that detonated my old life. The revenge I carried out had been complete. Some might even say merciless, but it wasn't the final chapter. It was a necessary one. A painful, messy, transformative chapter. The real victory hadn't been in what I tore down. It was in what I found underneath the wreckage. Buried beneath the facade of Brian's wife had always been a woman of resolve, clarity, and quiet power. A woman capable not just of calculated retaliation, but of authentic reinvention. I unlocked the door to my apartment, smaller than the house, but every piece of furniture, every painting, every pillow was mine. Chosen for comfort, not appearances. On the entry table sat a gift box I had placed there that morning, a birthday present to myself. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, engraved not with initials or a location, but with the star coordinates of this exact night. My rebirth night. A reminder that even when you've lost your bearings, there's always a way forward. I fastened it to my wrist just as my phone buzzed. A text, unknown number. "I know it's your birthday. Despite everything, I hope it's happy." I stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it without replying. Some chapters are better left closed. A year ago, I would have obsessed over that message, analyzed every word, wondered what it meant, whether it was an olive branch or bait. The woman I am now simply saw it for what it was, an echo. Nothing more. My revenge had been exact, my strategy flawless. But in the process of executing it, I uncovered something far more valuable. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And I had finally arrived there. Tomorrow would bring new clients, new challenges, maybe, in time, even new love. But tonight, on my 39th birthday, I celebrated the most important relationship I had ever reclaimed, the one with myself. Dear friend, sometimes life breaks us in the places we never thought could crack. Love, trust, family. But it's in those fractures that we discover the truth about who we are. This story isn't just about revenge. It's about reclaiming power after betrayal. About rising not with rage, but with resolve. The Stoics teach us that we cannot control what happens to us, only how we respond. Brianna chose not to crumble, but to rebuild. Not to forget, but to transcend. If you've ever been hurt, abandoned, or underestimated, remember this. You are not what was done to you. You are what you choose to become afterward. And sometimes the most radical act of healing is choosing to begin again, on your own terms. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that stir the heart and strengthen the spirit. Your support means everything.